Hello and welcome. The New Voices series are 5 sessions with Ottawa artists that represent different demographics: Indigenous, Black, Two-Spirits LGBTQ+, New Canadians, and artists with a disability. Our intent is to open a conversation that touches on the barriers and challenges of being an artist of these marginalized groups, but also telling their stories of success. We would like to acknowledge the sponsorship of Factor, who made possible this project. The New Voices series is very well aligned with a Share World Fest mandate as an advocate by bringing awareness to audiences about the contributions of equity-seeking communities and providing artists a platform to amplify their voices. I hope you enjoy them. Hello and welcome back to the New Voices series. And today I have an exciting artist that I've been looking forward to meet for a while, Kimberly Sundstrom.
Thank you so much for having me here,
Welcome.
Yasmina. Yes, I'm excited to be part of the series.
Welcome, welcome. I'm so happy that you made it. And tell us a little bit about your songwriting. Who are you as an artist?
Yeah, well, my name is Kimberly Sundstrom, and I am a full-time singer-songwriter, musician in the Ottawa scene. I also produce, I engineer. I've started delving into video creation.
Who doesn't in the last year?
I know, right? I feel very well versed in the live streaming world. Something I never thought I would be able to say. So yeah, I wear a lot of hats in the music and the music scene and the music industry, and I think it's a bit of a necessity these days. You know, I feel like it's the days of being able to just do one thing are behind us, unfortunately, and you kind of have to wear a few different hats. But fortunately, I'm a bit of a hyperactive person, and I like being busy, and I like, you know, constantly kind of growing and learning in my craft and finding new ways to express myself creatively and express the content that I want to you know, share with the world in terms of my music. So that's a bit about me.
Wonderful, wonderful. And your songs, because we listened to one of the tracks that you sent us, and you have a beautiful voice.
Oh, thank you.
So your songs, or the stories that you kind of dive into, is more about family, race, feminism.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I am a Botswana Canadian queer woman, and I'm very visible about those multidimensional identities. But I'm also very proud to be visible about those multidimensional identities. You know, I think that there's been a lot of conversation over the years, and still not enough conversation about representation and about the lack of representation and the importance of a multitude of representation, especially in the arts, especially in the music industry. I think there's so many artists in my similar situation where we grew up not seeing ourselves in the arts, you know, in the fields that we thought, you know, we loved. You know, I love music. I live and breathe it, and it's been in my world since as long as I can remember. So yeah, it feels very natural for me to write content that speaks to my identity, speaks to my experiences in this world, speaks to my family. You know, growing up predominantly in Botswana, my parents meeting at a time when apartheid was still very much present and real in sub-Saharan Africa and South Africa. So there's just a lot of history that shapes who I am. I'm very proud of, is hard to kind of grasp, and still needs to be talked about, because we are not past all of these things. These things are so current, and we are not past them.
So alive. Huh?
So alive.
And this is the main purpose of putting this series and having these conversations. Now that we have the time and I guess the capacity that we can put on a virtual event where we just can have an honest conversation about things that probably a few years ago was kind of like a hard talk, and now we are becoming more and more open to talk about it. And you already mentioned about your multidimensional identities, and you already say that you self-identify yourself as a queer artist. So tell us a little bit about that journey. That's something that you always, I mean, because I guess it will be different from you to deal with something like being person of color, which always has been
You're
present.
wearing that. No,
You're wearing that, you cannot. There's no way you can hide
there's
it.
no unzipping that.
Particularly in your hair, right? But the queer, I mean, and I know even as an equity-seeking community, Two-Spirit LGBTQ plus is part of what one of those priority groups should be having more space and more opportunities. So how do you feel about that?
No, I really wholeheartedly agree with you. We should be having these transparent conversations that for a long time were kind of like, you know, like everybody was scared to say certain words, queer, black, oh my gosh. But, you know, that comes from, you know, these systemic and societal expectations or societal inputs about what's normal and what's not normal, right? And we can unpack that. I think that there's lots of eloquent conversations around that have really wholeheartedly unpacked that, and there's still lots of ways to go with that. But in terms of myself, in terms of identifying as queer, I do identify also as a lesbian. I'm very proud to wear that rainbow as well. But I really love the idea of being honest in my biographies when I'm sending bios to festivals or whatever, just to be honest and upfront about that, because it's part of who I am. And for a long time when I first started doing music, and I first started to do music as, like, you know, my full-time career path, I hid that part about myself. I was so scared to open up about my own sexuality, and I know that comes from growing up in I grew up in quite a few different countries, Botswana, South Africa, Malawi, Sri Lanka, Sudan, Canada, Australia, Thailand. And a lot of the countries that I was growing up in, as well as in Botswana, homosexuality was illegal. You know, in Botswana, the decriminalization of homosexuality happened in June of 2019. Yeah, so, you know, technically, before that, you know, if you were, you know, caught as being gay, you could be arrested. And growing up, I remember, you know, there was a friend of ours who was a hairdresser, and he was gay and living with his partner, and they apparently left the windows open when they were having some intimate time. Their neighbor called the cops on them, and they were arrested. So that fear... And I recognize that things take time, you know, change takes time. As disheartening as it is, change does take time. But that fear of feeling like part of yourself has some semblance of illegality really, really resonated and transpired in my career path as a musician. When I'd step on stage, I was really conscientious to not be read as queer, be read as a lesbian. I tried very much not to talk about... use the she pronoun when I was writing love songs. Okay. You know, I was very elusive with my writing. And now looking back on that, I mean, we all go through a journey. We all have to figure out ourselves, right? It doesn't, it's not rip off the Band-Aid and you are who you are. And I look back on it, and, you know, I'm so proud of where I've come from, you know, from where I started in terms of how I represented myself as an artist. But I understand it, you know, it's a self-preservation thing. And I'm not mad at my past self for that. I really understand it. And I think even now, as open-minded as we think our world is, it's clearly not. The pandemic has shown that. Yeah. The pandemic has shown how much still we need to grow, we need to learn, we need to unlearn as a society as a whole.
Absolutely. Yeah. And as you said, it's a journey. So, it is a journey. And everyone have the different paces, I guess. And so when at what point then you kind of felt comfortable or embracing this
myself,
your identity,
my whole self. And I can't say that I know my whole self entirely. I think we're all still learning a little bit every second. But yeah, I feel like I was working on cruise ships. That was the first time that I was really performing regularly, and I took a contract on a cruise and did contracts for about 2 years. It was super beneficial for me in terms of my performative side. Like, you know, I got to perform 6 nights
every day.
a week. Yeah, 6 nights a week for a different crowd every night. You really learn your craft. I got so much better at singing and playing and interacting with folks and connecting with the audience. So on that side, it was just it was wonderful. But that was really when it dawned on me how much I was hiding myself out of fear, because I was standing on that stage not being my whole authentic self, you know. And I had to break away from that. And I think really it was when I moved back to Ottawa a few years ago, probably somewhere in the midst of finishing contracts on cruises and, you know, establishing myself in Ottawa, that I really kind of have like some semblance of a light bulb moment of I can't do this. It's kind of exhausting. Like I feel sneaky. Yeah, it's tiring. I feel like I'm sneaking around on something that makes no sense.
Exactly.
You know, for my friends and my family, I was so proud of who I was. I was out to my parents. I was out to all my friends, but there was something about the performative side, and I recognized that you're standing on a stage with a bunch of lights shining on you, just all eyes, able to pick apart every aspect of you. And it took me a while to realize that I have a lot of pride in all aspects of myself, and I want to make sure that that's represented. And on top of that, you know, I didn't see myself in growing up in the music. So why wouldn't I want to be that person, that somebody who might be, you know, queer or questioning, you know, looking in the arts and seeing a queer black woman on stage performing and be like, that, I get that. Yeah. Okay, I see that. I see you.
Yeah.
So
that let's say transition, or let's say this new recognition or embracement of your new identity, did translating, I guess, into your songs, or into now you were kind of have more freedom to kind of express yourself, or
definitely
kind of like impacted your songwriting?
Definitely. There was a tangible shift, and I really feel that came out with the first album that I ever released, which is called The Kid, the Wall, and the Box. I call it the purple album because I have 2 albums. One is purple cover and one is a yellow cover. Okay. So the purple covered album.
How you recognize them and how you classify them.
Exactly. So that was when I moved to Ottawa. I'm a sound engineer, so I decided that I wanted to take on I wanted to try fully producing my own album, top to bottom, myself. And it was through the creation, composition, and writing and recording of that album that I really just kind of let myself be open, completely open and transparent, and just put it all out there.
Did it feel good?
It felt so good. It felt so
I bet.
freeing and just fantastic and wonderful. And I can remember writing a song, most likely about my ex, but using the she pronoun and just feeling like this was an important step. This was an important step for me. And I hope that I was really hoping that it would translate and be a recognized step for anybody who's listening and wants to hear themselves and see themselves.
I'm sure that's what happens. And that's the thing about the impact of what we do. I mean, it's not only for ourselves, it's only for an audience, and even hopefully some positive change in even younger generations.
Yeah, that's it. That is it. Yeah, I think that's really what it comes down to. Sorry, go ahead.
No. Just thinking, like, I know you, besides being a songwriter and being a sound engineer and doing videos and being kind of multi-talented, you also been taking some kind of a road of a little bit of advocacy, I would say, getting involved in certain board of directors and you know, like exposing yourself at a different level and trying to put yourself as well on the table, where a lot of conversations are happening currently about diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Tell me about that. How's that been going?
That's it is this year is the first time I've ever stepped into the role of board on an arts council, and it's an interesting perspective. It's an interesting view on the world of the arts that I had never delved into. But I recognize how important it is to be at the table and be the queer voice, be the BIPOC voice at the table to make sure that my communities that I care so much about are being seen by these organizations. And I think this is such an understated sentence, but this year has been extraordinarily difficult in terms of experiences that have happened and what we've gone through in terms of just in like 14 months, so much has happened. And unfortunately, really negative experiences. I've had such an increase in racist comments and insensitive comments directed at me. I've been called the N-word twice this year. Once while I was on stage, and it really just goes to show, a lot of people. I had a media person say to me, "Oh, I didn't think that racism existed in Ottawa." So it just really goes to show there's still so much awareness that needs to happen, and that's why I think it's so important for marginalized folks to take up that space and be the voice if they have the capacity. Right? We all don't have the capacity.
We don't.
I think I have the capacity. But I think that, I think it's still quite a long road. I know a lot of organizations are talking the talk because it's a bit of a hot topic right now to talk about anti-racist and inclusivity and diversity. But I think we've just started because I don't know.
It's a long and slow fight, and as you say, there's a lot of talk. Now we kind of in the seat where we need to take it to the next level, which is the action plan.
Yeah.
And I think it's not one person's responsibility only. It's a work for everyone to have their part. And like I said, one of the purpose of putting together this series was just about the new voices.
Yeah.
People who are hasn't been historically part of the table or didn't have enough opportunity or spaces. So I'm very glad that you made it today and so happy for you. Tell us a little bit about that. Any album coming up or?
I feel super excited to be talking about the fact that I've been writing a lot in this pandemic, and I also recognize that this writing comes from the experiences that we have all gone through over the past 14 months. But yeah, I feel like with the closures, I was worried that I was going to be, stifled creatively and not feel like, I don't know. I just wasn't sure what was going to come out, and it turns out it was the opposite. I've been writing so much, and I'm currently in the process of applying for a lot of grants to hopefully be able to record some new music that really, again, opens up myself and, is transparent about who I am and my heritage and my history and all aspects of myself.
Amazing. I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much for having me.
And I'm looking forward to hear that exciting album.
Okay? Absolutely.
You take care.
Thank you.
Sometimes I wanna shut the world outside. Don't wanna hear about
misery at the thought of my broken heart. All the while around me, people feel the kind of pain that turns your world from fine to insane. I don't mind waiting a while we figure it out. Put ideas on the line. Just say it, we'll be alright.
Welcome to the New Voices series. Today's episode, we will have artists from the Two Spirits LGBTQ+ communities. And it's a pleasure, an honor, and privilege to have William Lau.
Thank you very much, Yasmina.
William Lau is a Peking opera performer, and we will learn about things like gender bending. Tell us, William, what gender bending means.
Well, technically, it just means someone who is not restricted to the natural born gender assignment. So they will feel comfortable in the other gender or more fluid gender in terms of identity. So for me, in terms of gender bending, is specifically on stage for my theatrical performance.
Amazing. And Peking opera is such a unique and exciting way of performing, right? Because it combines dance, singing, visual art, martial arts sometimes, dance. So how this gender bending translating to the art that you do is because you basically focus on female roles?
Yes, totally. So basically, like you say, Peking opera is more like total theater. So singing, dancing, acting, and of course the visual part is very important. The makeup, the costume, and in the past, all roles were played by men. So in order to distinguish their gender, their age, we use the voice, we use codified movement in order to show the audience these are different kind of social status and gender. So that's why it is.
So gender bending, when you kind of check the box in this equity-seeking communities, so basically, this is the box that you will check, the 2L LGBTQ+?
Not necessarily. First of all, a box is just a box, right? You can always change identity. So, yeah. So, but LGBT, I will more identify, right?
Right.
Whereas gender bending, as I mentioned, is more like theatrical. Mm-hmm. And I think the most important and most beautiful thing is just be yourself. Be natural. I don't really care what boxes and what gender. I think when you are natural, beauty come out.
Absolutely. So this concept definitely translates better into the stage when you are acting or when you are performing, right? But doesn't translate into your daily life.
Not necessarily, but in terms of obviously, it's not about nowadays, like men or women alike. They are very conscious about fashion and color. It's not like in the past where usually traditional men they don't really care about their outlook. Now they do everything. So same with me. I'm not afraid to wear like orange and pink. But of course nowadays everybody does that, right? So it's a bit of awareness and level of comfort. Okay, so you won't feel like, oh, this is too girly for me, right? No, I won't feel. I just say, well, whatever. I look good. Hey, I feel like that. So that's kind of like not prescribed to. Oh my God. Boys have to wear blue. Right?
Absolutely. And let me tell you, you look fabulous on this color.
Thank you.
So let's teach or let's give the audience a little bit of more of the educational aspect and bring them to a little bit of the historic feature of this term, like where this gender bending come from. This idea or concept. I know we were talking about this earlier, and you mentioned like in Asia, this is very common. Like people wouldn't even question. And this is because historically, men will play female roles, and women were not allowed to be on a stage. So do you think this is kind of like where it comes from?
Well, I think, first of all the terminology is only terminology. They are more, be it a scholar or invention, sometimes because of political needs, sometimes it's because of a movement that can gather people together or to counter certain discrimination. So those things, those terms come about. There's many terms that we don't hear in the past, but there's a new invention for the contemporary society.
Absolutely.
But in terms of your second part of your question, this kind of we can call gender bending or role reversal or playing the role of the opposite sex, whatever different term you use, in a lot of the classical tradition in Asia, such as Japanese, Indonesia, China, is very common, and is a lineage that people, the artists, are playing the opposite gender role on stage. And even in the older time in England, Shakespearean time, people were also doing, like a role reversal. Boys will play the female role.
Yeah, great. So let's say how this all translates into the Canadian society, or how does it feel for a Peking opera performer as you are, connecting with the kind of Canadian art scene?
Well, first, I think in terms of the playing the female role first, here people are still a bit surprised. Oh, you play female role? Like why? Like because there's lack of those historical knowledge, right? Whereas like when I perform in Indonesia, like it's normal. Like people just accept and sure.
They don't question it.
They don't question. And when you talk about how I bring Peking opera into Canada, I think a very good question. First of all, I think as Canadian, we're very privileged to live in a multicultural society that actually value the freedom of artistic expression. So I have the wonderful privilege to work with many artists with different cultural background. I also have the creativity with other artists to collaborate, for example, to push the traditional canon. For example, in my interpretation of Peking opera, I do bilingual. So meaning that I have like a Caucasian Canadian professional actor who will sing and speak in English while I respond in Mandarin.
Amazing.
And then the audience doesn't need any interpretation. They will be really able to follow the story without seeing the translation. And the other part is also collaborating with other dance artists or musicians, so then we can experiment, using traditional vocabulary. How do we combine with contemporary music?
Excellent. So let's go and watch a little bit of your performance. What about that?
Sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being here. It's been a pleasure, and thank you for all the learnings and education.
Thank you for the opportunity, Yasmina.